everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie Nofel, and if you're new here, I make impractical crafts and lifestyle content. And this week, we are going to be making some paper mache folklore ornaments for our Christmas tree, because when you have a toddler and almost a second one, then having very durable ornaments around the bottom of your tree is very important. And I want to stick with the vintage inspiration that I always do for all of my decor. So without any further ado, let's just hop right on into it.
If you are thinking to yourself, gosh golly, I sure wish I could listen to Katie crumple up some tinfoil, because that sure sounds fun, let me tell you, I don't think you want to. Just have a listen. Do you hate that yet? Anyways, basically the goal of this is to make it so that I get the bulk of what I want, because what I do ends up taking forever to dry. Normally when I do paper mache, I always have an armature just to make sure all of the paper is supported and it can keep its structure. It's time for Make That Goop, new edition. This is something I'd never tried before. This is a way to make paper clay, and basically you take some toilet paper and then some supposedly hot water, but to be honest, my faucet was not heating up and I did not want to turn on the kettle. Then you get it super wet and you just let it sit. And then you squeeze as much water out and you add in Elmer's glue. And all I will say is, when I was a child, I definitely got in trouble for playing with water and toilet paper and throwing it against the wall and watching it stick. And now I get to do it as an adult making content. So take that, Mom. Starting this off almost immediately on the wrong foot. I could not find the painter's tape that I wanted to use to wrap the armature. So it ended up sticking more to my hand than to this first ball. If you've never used this before, I would describe it as feeling almost like a very sticky Play-Doh, like if you made Play-Doh with glue instead of flour. For the other three armatures, I then struggled to figure out how to attach the ribbon. Since for the first one, I had crumpled the ribbon into the center of the ball as I went. For these three, my original plan had been to use the painter's tape, but because I couldn't find it at the time, this was truly a struggle. And after a ridiculous amount of footage of me attaching the ribbon with this tinfoil, I finally got to putting my paper mache over the tinfoil. And as you can see, it became a disaster. That was the exact moment I almost decided to quit this entire video, because I had been getting so frustrated already by the lack of stickiness of my paper mache to the tinfoil and my frustration of not being able to find the painter's tape. But luckily, Hens came home and managed to pull it out of thin air, and it became so much easier. Once the ornaments were thoroughly mummified, I was able to stick the paper mache mixture directly to the painter's tape, and this worked so much better. And then it was time to have them hang up to dry. And for some reason, Arizona being uncharacteristic was quite cold this week, and so it took several days for it to dry. My wonderful husband then drew the faces on for me so I could figure out where I wanted to put the natural curves of the cheekbones and the chin. And using the paper clay that had been sitting for several days and worked fantastically still, I was able to put in the cheeks, the nose, and the chin. And it stuck great to its dried self, and honestly had no problems with this. So far, I really like paper clay. And with that, it was time to leave them to dry for a couple of days again. Here, Owen. Ready? Yeah. My plan for these ornaments, instead of leaving them a flat color, was to do multiple layers of different dry brushing. So for the very first layer, I used whatever base color I wanted, and then I added in a significant amount of black, and I mixed it up to really mute and darken the base color, because this is what is going to be seen in all of the cracks. Then I applied a very generous amount all over the ornaments, unfortunately covering the faces, and trying to get it into all of the nooks and crevices. I think in the future, if I use this method again, I will actually sand it down a little first, just to try to make it a little more smooth. Then, taking the color that I wanted them to be, I went through and I dry brushed the color over all of the ridges. If you don't know what dry brushing is, you're basically going to abuse your paintbrush where you get some of the paint on, and then you are going to make it so that there's next to no paint left on your paintbrush by the time you actually put it on whatever it is. And as you can see in this video, it's a very subtle difference, but this is what helps give it that vintage look where it's not all the same color. I tried to focus mostly on the cheekbones and the facial structure, the center of the ornament, rather than doing it all around. So while there is dry brushing all the way around the ornament, it is heavily focused in the center. Once the paint was dry, it was time for me to go in and paint the faces. I didn't get footage of it, but Hens did draw the outlines for me, which was really helpful. They kind of remind me of the tragedy and comedy masks that you think of when you think of like ancient Greece. And honestly, I'm not mad at it. I now present you with one of the most important requests of my entire career.
Mama, are you sure?
No.
Are you sure Parliament?
There, now you paint it. Paint it.
Then, because I was kind of psyching myself out and thinking that they were really flat and scary looking, I went in with some blush and put it on the cheeks, the nose, and the chin. So now maybe they look a little sauced, but I think they look way cuter. I also used some coordinating colors, so light green to the green and pink to the red to highlight around the eyes and also around the chin. All this gave them a lot more dimension and personality and made them look a little less like the tragedy comedy masks, but still kind of that vintage, almost off-putting vibe that comes with folk art. Then came the scariest part of any project, and that is when you smother it in white and hope that it all dries okay, also known as Mod Podge.
Well, I think we achieved what we set out to do. Do I always kind of end up making it up as I go? Yes. These sort of came out like my inspiration, but I'm pretty happy with them. They're very unique. I think that they will become nostalgic as time goes, so I'm not upset about it. I will say, these things are hefty. So, possibly a weapon. Definitely not going to break if one of my kids pulls it off the tree. I'm a little concerned about them breaking something else, but we'll get there when we get there. The paper clay, I like it. I do feel nostalgic for traditional paper mache. I've done that in most of my videos that I do something like this because the recipe that I typically use was my grandmother's, but this, good alternative, and I think it helps you get more details. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy a mix of cozy and chaos, and you like vintage inspired things, lifestyle content, like mom stuff and vintage crafts, then I am your channel. And if you feel like sticking around, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Toodles!